Let's get more now on our top story, the arrest of 1,300 people across France on a fourth night of rioting following the death of a 17-year-old who was shot by a police officer. The funeral of Nahel Merzouk, who was of North African descent, is due to take place within the next hour. Nabila Ramdani is a French-Algerian journalist and the author of Fixing France. And Nabila, the government, they're keen to play down the intensity of the riots over the last couple of nights. Officials saying that last night's violence was of lower intensity compared to the night before. What's your take?
Well, I can assure you that this is not the feeling you do get when you're in central Paris witnessing it all. And last night, again, saw a huge night of rioting, not only in Nanterre and indeed the cities, in the suburban cities around Paris, but also across France. And this is despite curfews that have been imposed from 9 p.m., instructing people to stay at home effectively. You quoted the Interior Ministry figures earlier of 1,300 people being arrested last night alone. Now, an interesting statistic of all the arrests that have been made so far since Tuesday is that the average age of those being arrested is between 17 and 19. So these are very youthful rioters, and it's almost a new youthful way for French citizens who are rebelling against the system effectively. And a lot of the rioters have the same profile as Nahel Merzouk. They have an North African background, and they complain of persistent discrimination, and indeed that includes police violence. Now, one of the things that is worrying is the criminality involved in some gangs being involved in the riots. We've seen, and I've witnessed it myself, an awful lot of looting in central Paris, from sports stores to the more upmarket ones, and also in big cities such as Marseille and Lyon. Now, of course, they're all chanting justice for Nahel, but beyond that, there are also gangs of criminals. But as we know, France is a protest nation, and this kind of violent protest intent on causing damage and indeed destruction is a part of the tradition, dare I say. We see it from the Yellow Vest protests to the more recent pension reform protests. But, you know, I would say that even though it's quite right to take to the street to express anger at what's happened to Nahel, I think that clearly some of the criminality involved is inflaming the situation. And what is also not helpful in all this is when you hear a police union coming out calling the rioters vermin and hordes of savages. This is just a kind of inflammatory language that sums up what France is about at the moment. It sums up the divide between a reactionary establishment backed up by a hugely powerful security state, including many paramilitaries, and lots of people from ethnic minority backgrounds who feel that they are being discriminated against in every aspect of their lives. They are being denied opportunities, and they feel like they're treated like second-class citizens.
Let's talk further about that racial division which you touched on there. From your point of view, what do you think this says about France as a whole when it comes to racial tensions and segregation? Because this is not the first time that we're seeing issues such as these in terms of that intense segregation when it comes to race relations.
Yes, absolutely. I think there have been criticism of the way Macron and his administration are handling these riots at the moment. The president views these riots as purely a law and order problem, but of course there are more deep-seated problems, including institutional racism within the police and discrimination against sections of societies. In particular, those from African and North African background, of Arab and Muslim backgrounds. Yesterday only, the United Nations was expressing huge concerns about racism within the police force. France's own anti-discrimination body has found that if you are from a Black or indeed an Arab background, you are 20 times more likely to be stopped and searched by the police. And generally speaking, the European Court of Human Rights is constantly criticizing France for its treatment of its ethnic minorities. So I think there has to be a reforming of the police. not least of all because what happened, the shooting of Nahel has brought sharp focus to this kind of brutality, but also there needs to be policies aimed at bringing people from those backgrounds into mainstream society and giving them opportunities. I mean, the fact that... Mhm.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I mean, you're just about to go into that, but realistically, how do you see this being resolved then? What do you make of the government's tactics at the moment in terms of trying to resolve this? Should they stick to just sort of Emmanuel Macron, for example, staying back, not being seen at these scenes at the moment? Or should we be seeing more of him? Should we be seeing Emmanuel Macron coming out and we're able to see more of him and in terms of what he says about this?
Well, it's interesting that Emmanuel Macron's position has evolved quite swiftly. He started off by being quite conciliatory, and dare I say that's quite an unusual stance for a president of France, when he effectively said that the shooting of Nahel was not just a death, it was an unlawful killing by an agent of the state, a serving police officer. He was criticized quite harshly by police unions who accused him of attacking the police per se, and also quite fairly of effectively interfering with the judicial process. And since then, he's rode back completely, and he's taking a much harsher stance, sending extra police. Last night alone, he sent an extra 45,000 paramilitaries. And let me tell you, they are not just beat police officers. They are highly trained riot police officers equipped with body armors, machine guns, batons, and tear gas, and they keep smothering the crowd with tear gas. It has to be said that tear gas is a chemical weapon that is banned from war zones, and it's unlawful under international law, but the French police regularly use it against a gathering. And I don't think that throwing more police officers, especially elements of it being accused of racism, is going to sort the problem out. There's a long track record of police brutality against Algerian citizens, in particular, French citizens of Algerian background. Nanterre, where Nahel is from, and where he grew up, has historical resonance because it used to be the site of the biggest shanty towns in France in the 1950s and the 1960s, where up to 10,000 Algerian migrant workers were parked there with no electricity or running water. They were being branded by the state as enemies within. They were branded as insurgents. They were often the victim of extrajudicial killings, wounding, and torture. And it's not that long ago, within living memories, where we saw riot squad officers murdering up to 300 Algerians in cold blood in central Paris, throwing them in the Seine and being left to drown. Now, time moves on, but those shanty towns are now the site of grim housing estates where the descendants of those Algerians now live.
Nabila, I'm so sorry. I just have to interrupt you there because we're just running out of time, but very grateful for your time here on Sky News this afternoon. Nabila Ramdani, who is a French-Algerian journalist and also the author of Fixed in France. Thank you.